Hey guys, Chris again from ClassicVWBugs.com, and in this tip I want to talk to you about how to put in your engine tar boards in your classic Beetle. And we actually make our own engine tar boards here in shop, and we actually sell them on our website. These kind of have a vintage look to what they used to look like back in the day. But what you're going to want to do is, of course, remove your motor. The best way to do this procedure is with your motor out of the car. And what you're going to want to do is then bend the spikes that are on the firewall, the rear firewall, straight. If they're bent down like you see here, you're going to want to bend them straight. Just get a pair of pliers. If they're kind of tight, you can get a screwdriver in there, pry them up, and then get the pliers to kind of straighten them out. Then you also want to bend the tabs down that are on the side, just so the side pieces can go in a little bit easier for you. Just level them out. Okay. Sometimes these side pieces up here, these other tabs, you're going to have to bend them out too, but sometimes they break off, so you might have to improvise a little bit there. Now if this is the first time you're kind of putting the car together too, you want to get your wires in place, and these earlier Bugs actually had these clamps that held down the wires on the rear firewall there. You want to straighten those out because these will actually poke through the rubber board for the 55 and earlier Beetles. Later models, the wires stay behind the tar board. And also set your wires up, set your harness up. If you got to, put your harness up to your starter, you want to just keep everything in order, get everything back into place. Side wires also go into the tail lights. You're going to want to set them up. And then if you have later Bugs, a lot of times those the harness will attach to the rear firewall there, and we'll also have clamps to hold them down, and they'll also stay behind the tar board. But the side pieces go in first. These are the side pieces, and just like as you see them, that's the way they're supposed to go in. I see people putting these in wrong all the time, but these always go in first, and that top triangular, the point actually goes up into the firewall. And tucked up. I see too many people turning these on the side, and they're emailing me telling me that they don't fit right. But this is the way they're supposed to go in. Sort of a right angle there, as you can see, and just kind of set it up into place. Put it behind the tabs. And that back part of it sits flush against the back firewall, because then the back tar board piece will go over that. But you want that nice and flat on the little shelf there. Push those tabs down. That's what holds that into place. And you're going to want to then, this is sometimes the tricky part. If you have the real tough tar boards, you got to get this corner up and behind, so it sits flush on the rear firewall. You got to make sure you push it up into the crevice there. As you can see here, you see up and flush with the back wall. Okay, nice and neat, both sides. Get those in, and now the rear board goes in. And what you're going to want to do, sometimes you're going to want to test fit this. We don't punch holes in this, prior to you getting it, just in case, because these boards are not year specific. So first you want to do is just test fit it and make sure you get it up into place. You want to center it. Now depending on your year Bug, you're going to have to cut a hole into the firewall, into the tar board, so the wiring harness can come through. Later Bugs have the wiring harness coming in on this side, on the upper left driver's side. So you get yourself like a hole punch, similar like this, and get yourself a hammer, and you can actually hammer that a nice perfect hole through the tar board, so you can poke your wiring harness through. We have an earlier Beetle here, so our wiring harness does not come into the upper left driver's side. But what you're going to want to do is then center it again, and then start poking the spikes through the tar board. Just massage it out, get it as smooth as you can, and just poke those spikes through. Just be careful you don't poke your fingers. just make sure this tar board is centered perfectly first before you start poking the spikes through. You want it up into that crevice, up into that cabin there, nice and even. So, and then again, on these earlier bugs, these tabs that hold the wires in place go through the tar board, as you can see here on the rear right side there. You got to poke those tabs through. That's why I straightened them out before, so you could just cut some slits into the tar board and then poke those through. This is for pretty much 55 and earlier. 56 and later, the wires then stay behind the board. But again, massage it smooth, get the board nice and flat, and just start pressing the spikes through again. Just be careful again. A lot of times I poke my finger. So, and that's what your tar board should look like in place. Now, what you got to do then is then bend the spikes down. You don't want to keep them up. The spikes hold the board in place. But that's the way it's supposed to look. Now you could also use some tire wet. If you want to use some Armor All or something to shine the board up, you can. Make it look nice. And you just bang those spikes down. And that's what will hold it into place. And that about does it. There might be some trimming involved with some of these boards that you get. Again, they're not year specific, so some trimming involved, and you might have to punch some holes for the wiring harness. But other than that, that is it. Any questions? Chris at ClassicVWBugs.com.